This is not a test. Stay calm in an orderly fashion. Make your way to the lifeboats.
Mayday, the ship is sinking.
All right, welcome back, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning into the Lifeboat Addiction Recovery Cast. My name is Christian Powell, one of your co-hosts, and today is Wednesday, which means we are talking about meditations, psychology, therapy, whatever, just all around questions of the universe or just about what's going on in our schedules. With that being said, I'm joined by my great co-host, Mr. Hunter Taylor. How you doing, man?
Oh, I'm doing pretty good, man. Kicking off Recovery Coach Academy today, so that was super fun. Always enjoy doing stuff like that. Always enjoy teaching. It's probably my favorite part of my job, honestly. So it's been interesting, I get to go on vacation here in a couple of weeks. Looking forward to that. I'm going back to see the folks in Iowa. Hopefully, rip some lips, aka fishing. In case any of you guys don't know, probably folks. They're like, "What is that?"
You said folks.
Yeah. Like I said, I'm from Iowa. What do you expect?
I guess, man. I guess.
How about y'all folks?
Y'all, youngins, yins. That's a Pittsburgh thing. Yins. Yeah, man. So we just we finished up our first day of Recovery Coach Academy. It's always an interesting day, It's especially when was the last time we did one? September, I think it was. So no, we did one November. I think it was. We did it right before Christmas, Christmas rush. So you have several months off and then you get back into it. And it's kind of like riding a bike. You get, we all are about timing. We got obviously kind of the loose stuff that we need to teach them. But then a lot of times, at least in my experience at the conversations that we have in our academies is like, they like the didactics. That's what they said today. We like the didactics. We like learning this stuff, but ultimately we like hearing the experiences of guys that are in the field that know what they're talking about. Because I would say that we do that all the time. We'll say, this is what you need to know, but here's a couple of key pieces of information that you can only learn while you're in the field. And, we'll teach you that. And then we kind of expand and expound on like, you won't believe us, but here's the case, or this is what happens when everything goes perfect. So yeah, man, it's been a fun day.
Yeah. I think it's kind of important what you're talking about there. So there's something about this field to where when you go through, we've talked about this before, when you go through Recovery Coach Academy, we're really talking about the way you're supposed to do things if everything goes according to plan or if everything goes perfectly. And it's not usually like that. Like we talked about in the class, people are complex, right? People are special.
Yeah.
There's a lot of different things going on with them. So how you deal with that's always going to change. Your responses are going to always have to change. So it's something you can really only learn through experience. Well, it's nice to have these general guidelines, bumpers, if you will, kind of like, bowling down the bowling alley, you got those little bumpers on the side, keeping you in the lane. But ultimately, you're going to be all over that lane. You're going to be back and forth,
Yeah. And I think when teaching our recoveries, we get the new batch in. We get the people that are coming here, the bright-eyed, bushy tails. And I think that there's this moment where we have to kind of reality check them of like, and we do this at the beginning of every class. Welcome to the truth behind this, which is if you thought you were going to come in here to be a paid sponsor, that's not the case. If you thought you were going to come in here to save the world by the power of your testimony, it's not the case. As a matter of fact, if you think you're coming in here for money, you're in the wrong field for that. But
right.
If you're coming in here with any other reason driving you other than you want to make a measurable change in someone's life who is struggling with addiction, please, here's the door. Or please sign off now. Nothing, no ill will against you. There's nothing to say. We won't speak bad to you, to your mama or anything like that. But when we're doing this field, we're dealing with people's lives. And I think that's the overarching theme that we constantly have to reiterate throughout the academy of this is people's lives. This is people's lives. This is people's life. And when you get to it, when you start to become involved in the way a recovery coach does into somebody's life, in a very quick fashion, you can ruin someone's life. You could ruin it so that the person who is so bold to come out of their 20-year addiction stint to just say, like, maybe I'll try recovery because I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. And then a recovery coach leaves them with a bad taste in their mouth. And then what? They're out in the wind. And maybe they're out there another 10 years, or even worse, maybe they're out there for a week, they die. Like, this is always an interesting time for me because it's humbling to be able to be in a position to teach people what we have learned over the course of our job. Because just as you said, we'll teach them how to do things if everything's right. But a lot of times it's like, we'll teach them how to do everything if everything's right. But we'll then teach them, like, here are some common things that usually go wrong.
Well, and the other nice thing is too, is like, it breaks apart the intellectualized version. So when we're going through stuff like RCA, Recovery Coach Academy, we're looking at like what is written down in a textbook. You know, it talks about like self-care. That's a great instance. So in there, it talks about self-care. And it talks about like burnout. It talks about empathy fatigue. It talks about things like that can happen in this field. But then we give them the real life experience. You know, like, I didn't practice self-care, and this is what happened to me in this field. Like, this is a real life scenario of what happens when you don't do these things. These are real life examples of how you do these things. I sat down, I mean, just as I would sit down with a recovery, and I would be like, okay, what do you enjoy to do? What are your hobbies? What are your interests? If they have those things, I encourage them and do something. You know, go out. If you like fishing, go out and fish. If you like hunting, go out and do some hunting. If you like walking through the woods, go walk through the woods. Take your kids with you. If you like playing golf, go play some golf sometime. Whatever you can do within your means, you got to treat yourself a little bit and practice self-care. And it's no different for people in the recovery field. I would say I don't want to say it's more pertinent, because I think it's extremely important to a person in early recovery to practice self-care. But I think it's just as important for a recovery coach to practice self-care as well, because we're burnout and empathy fatigue and what do they call that? Traumatization.
Vicarious traumatization.
Yeah, that's no joke, man. Like, it will happen, you know. And then we also talk about callus. People don't like talking about callus.
Yeah, and callus is. We were just talking about this. I don't think as directly as labeling it as callous, but it is necessary. It is not to call it evil, because I don't think it's evil, but it is, for lack of a better term, that necessary evil. It is something that if you do not develop callous in this field, you will fail. Bar none, without a doubt, it will happen. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but you will burn out. And we have seen how many people turn over from our agency, from other agencies, from other fields of work, just from burnout. And it's a very important conversation that's happening right now. I think we're going to actually end up having Dr. Burke and Hoffman talk a little bit about even in the nursing and doctoral field, like, guess what? Medical field, they suffer from burnout more than most. So you have to develop a callus that is your ability to have things that are difficult for a person in front of you, have things that are very traumatic, somewhat life-altering events, and have people tell you on a daily basis that those things are happening, but realize, like, that's not your circus, it's not your monkeys. That is somebody in front of you that is struggling with something, and you can try to the best of your ability to help them within the role that you've taken in their life, but it is not your problem. The best example I have of this is I've had guys that, they come to me and they're in crisis because they don't have a place to live. So they sit down with a stack of applications and then they tell me to fill them out. And it's just like, you slide them back over the table and be like, I have a house. I have a family. I have a support system. You, however, are struggling with this. So I'm willing to help you and assist you in this, but I'm not going to do this for you. And I think that can be very difficult for people sometimes.
Yeah. And I mean, like, I think we talked about this during the academy today. There is going to be those asterisks to that, right? So if someone's like, if someone is what do they call it? Illegible? Is that
illegible? What do you?
No, there's a word for it. When people can't read or write.
Oh, I don't know. My brain is burnt to a crisp.
Yeah, the same here. But there is a word for it out there somewhere. Illegible is not it, but
illiterate.
I don't think it's illiterate either. I think there's an actual. Maybe it is illiterate. I don't know.
Illiterate's when you can't read.
Okay, so either way, when somebody might not be able to read, maybe it's because of a developmental issue, maybe it's because they really need glasses. Someone might not be able to, write. We run across all sorts of things in this field. So obviously then we'll sit down and fill out some paperwork for them, but only what they're not able to do.
Yeah.
That's the biggest thing is like, and then the other part of callus that I think is so interesting, something you brought up, it spans across I want to call it human services, but that's not really the right, because I'm nursing, anything to deal with helping people. I love talking to my mom about some of the aspects of like self-care, callus, things like that, because she's a nurse.
Empathy fatigue. Yeah.
Burnout, all that sort of stuff. She was a nurse. She's not anymore. She works in patient flow now for a hospital. But she was a nurse in the vent unit. And then she was a house supervisor. So she was like the person there's any codes or anything she had to respond. And now she works in the patient flow. So she dealt with like patients. She'd worked with for a long time. People would be in there for long extended periods of time. And some of them, like, you grow closer than others, just like recovery coaching. You grow closer to certain clients than others, like you obviously treat them all the same, but there's still going to be those ones that you're really excited about. And you're like, man, this guy's going to do good. Dude.
And that you just hit on a point that's so difficult, because guess what? You deal with people that are just gosh darn so likable.
Yeah, I know.
They're really cool people. They really have a heart for this. They're people that you start to see yourself a little bit in. They're people that you're like, man, that make a good recovery coach. I'd love to train them, yada, yada, yada. And then you got the guy that comes in there and it's just like, well, last time he saw me, on the last episode of Berate My Recovery Coach, right? But it's difficult. It is difficult to be conscious, because we as human beings, that's not how we are. That's not how we develop. We develop to be able to display empathy.
Social.
And there's mental disorders. There's personality disorders based around people who can't find empathy, or who don't display empathy in an appropriate way. And we as recovery coaches, I think, so much struggle with having to combat that human nature of feeling empathy. I mean, we've had conversations sometimes where it's like, you feel that you should be having a certain emotion about it. And it's not the type of emotion of like, I need to process this, or I don't know how to process this. It's like, I feel in a normal circumstance that I should be having X, Y, or Z emotion. And to be honest, I don't have an emotion about it. It's like, it is what it is. It is, it's not anything that I can do about it. And we've had that conversation of like, do I fake it? Do I fake that emotion to somebody so that they can show that I'm empathetic? And then you get into am I a sociopath? Like, you get into those, like, do I have a personality disorder? Yeah. And it's like, I don't think so, because guess what? You find somebody, you find a recovery coach, you find a case manager, you find a therapist or a clinician that has been in this field for an extended amount of time, 2, 3, 4 years. There's two things that have happened. Either A, they have found that callus and they're able to say to you, no, that's a natural emotion. That, like that kind of somewhat indifference. I mean, I have that. I know many that do have that. It's a form of protection. It's a form of, it is an adaptive tool that you have integrated into your being so that you don't have to deal with this. Or the person is in shambles. Their life is a wreck. They're a hot mess. They constantly are crying bitter tears. They're not able to get enough sleep. They're,
vicarious traumatization,
just horrible things. And they're like, I'm not sure if I'm going to stay in this field. I don't know. And it's just like, what do you say to them? You gotta strengthen up. Not that tears are a bad thing or anything like that, but it's like, you gotta distance yourself. You're too close to somebody. Like,
as much as I hate saying it, because I don't like the word, but compartmentalize.
Yes.
100%. It's actually, people in recovery, I think, have the same attitude. So like when we're talking about people like in a fellowship, I cannot tell you when I went to early meetings and someone died, they're like, better them than me, by the grace of God, there go I.
Cold.
And I'm like, damn, man. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that, but if not, edit it out. But no, it's like, come on, like, that's rough. But now that I like see it, it's like, if people in the fellowship, people in this field, people around recovery start losing their serenity, losing all that and letting that impact them on such a deep level, every time someone passes away or every time someone goes back out and resumes back to their original ways, relapses, whatever you want to call it, how are you supposed to do that, man? It's like, it happens all the time.
Well, and not to get super, spiritual or super holistic or abstract or anything, but it's like, okay, first let me preface this. There might be people listening to this right now that think that what I'm about to say is cock and bull, A, or B, that are like, oh my gosh, what pseudo-scientific nonsense. Right. When I say the word empath, when I say the word, people that their mood or emotion or feeling changes just by being in the presence of somebody that is expressing a significant mood alteration. Like, I would say when people are super angry around me, I get frustrated. I get angry. And they don't even have to necessarily say anything. I just can read their body language, and my body language starts to tense up and I start to get anxiety and frustrated. Right.
So when we're saying empath, you're just talking about extreme form of empathy.
Extreme forms of empathy. I'm not talking necessarily a superpower.
You're like, I can read your emotions.
I know what you're going to do next. I know your feelings.
now you're surprised. Now you're scared.
Yeah. But yeah, I think that people hear that and that's the immediate, like what they revert to is just like, nobody needs your old world gypsy magic. Like, it's not that it's having experienced enough things in my life. I have empathy for others. You know, I'm a pastor by trade or preacher by trade. And it is like, I need to, as a preacher, be able to display that level of empathy to show the people that God has entrusted with me, or the God of my understanding has entrusted me, that I can talk to them about this stuff and let them know, like, yes, it's okay to cry. Yes, it's okay to be in that moment. But when you do that in this field, I have never seen somebody that does it successfully for a long term.
Yeah. I mean, when emotions start to affect your actual being, and I've had this happen. Okay. So like it was a few weeks ago or whatever. I had a really rough day at work. I had a really rough caseload.
And I probably called him right afterward and said, so you're going to hate me, but
yeah, probably. But no, I mean, when I felt that, I at the workplace, I talked to my clinician, and I just kind of like, I'm not very much on like sharing my emotions too much, you know, in like an open setting. So I was like, man, it's about the most stressful shift or 2 hours I've had in my entire career. And she brought me in, sat me down, asked me what was going on, talked to me about it a little bit. And I was able to talk about it.
That's Dr. Smith. Okay. Though. I mean, she's just that good.
Yeah, I know. Right. And then I came to you and like, we talked about it too. You're my supervisor.
Made it worse.
Yeah. Made it way worse. No.
Way worse. Just kept piling on.
But yeah, I mean, it's like when we feel those things, it is extremely important that we address those emotions while we are at work.
Yes.
It's like before you leave that door, because for me, I don't know about anybody else. As soon as I walk out of that office door, probably about 3 hours before, don't tell my boss that's sitting right across from me that. No.
What was that?
What? No. So like when I leave that office, everything that happened during that day, bad, good, indifferent, don't care. It's there. Yes. It's at the office. I care about you. Like I've actually talked to a client one time because he had a kind of a habit of like trying to reach out to me after asking me questions that weren't really like not in my spectrum of things. And I kind of told him, hey man, between 9 and 5, like I'm here for you. I will work to the best of my ability to help you. And I care about you. After 5 o'clock though, I have to take care of myself. I'm also an addict. I'm also a person in recovery. I cannot afford to carry anyone else's weight with me. Once I leave those doors, that's time for me to take care of myself and make sure my own stuff is straight. This is my job. So
recovery coaches, people who are going to work in the human service field, students, what you just heard from Hunter is verbatim what you should say to the clients or the participants in your programming, is identifying that thing and just saying, I am what I am, and I need to take care of me. So therefore I got your back 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. If don't call me on the weekends, don't do it, because it's not going to happen, you know? And I think that's so important that you did do that for the recovery.
Yeah. I mean, it sets boundaries, you know, it's like, if those boundaries, let's go into it. Okay. So like when we're talking about this, there's two sides that we can be on. Either A, yes, that's very healthy, or B, no, you should be there for that person. What if they're struggling? I'd say those are going to be the two overwhelming opinions that follow from this conversation. Let's look at both sides. Okay. So no, you should be there for that person. Recovery calls me at midnight. I answer that phone call. His house is on fire, a dumpster fire, whatever, you know, something bad has happened.
So just to be clear, you said his house is on fire, dumpster fire. Are you saying in the dumpster? Okay. Yes. Just making sure.
Yes. He's living in a dumpster at the moment. So whatever it is, there's something going on, and I get out of bed and I go and I help him. And I do that repeatedly.
Over and over and over again. Yes.
Yeah. Because now I've done it once. I've opened a door, and now that is okay.
Yep.
And then it keeps happening, and two things are going to happen. One, I'm burnt out, son. I need my sleep. You know what I'm saying? You call me at midnight and make me do something, and I don't get much sleep. I hate not getting sleep. I don't do drugs anymore. I cannot go 3 days without sleep. It's been proven. Well, I haven't tried it yet, but I'd assume if I get like 6 hours of sleep, I start like yelling at people.
Dude, I got like a solid 5. I basically did not get any REM sleep. And my wife will tell you, I am a bitter old bridge troll. I like, my cat doesn't get out of my way fast enough. Move. And I'm like, the dishes, I need a I'm a tyrant. And God bless my wife yet again for putting up with me, because there is a baby in our household, and there's also a small infant in our household. I am the baby, and then I have a child. Like that is exactly how that plays out 100% of the time. My wife is I don't know. I don't know why she's still here. I don't understand. You look at it on paper and you're like, what is she doing, man? She clearly has got something going on, because him, really?
It's the beard.
It's the beard. Yeah. That's it.
So yeah, when you're looking at the other side, that's one thing that happens. One, you burn out. The other side is you have just created a codependent relationship with your client, which is the most
new.
Exactly.
New. How about you don't?
Right. Because then what happens when you take a vacation? Are you going to answer calls on vacation too? Are you going to answer calls every time he needs help? So when you burn out inevitably and you end up leaving this field or relapsing yourself, that recovery is not going to be doing too well. Because if that is what you're doing, you're creating codependent relationships and working past hours on a consistent basis, you will burn out. When the burnout happens, more than likely you will leave this field, or you will, if you are a recovering addict, you might just return to your substance. I don't know. But there's a good possibility. So when you do those things and that recovery no longer has you to lean on, that recovery is going with you.
Yes.
I think that's extremely important to talk about the dangers of that, because we want to help people. You know, we see the importance, we see the people's needs, but it's like, we got to understand what's healthy and what's codependent.
Yeah. And here's the thing. I think it would behoove us to also talk about kind of the secondary aspect of this. If you are a recovery coach and you see somebody in your agency that has this going on, first address it. Maybe not address it directly with them. You might address it with a supervisor or something, or maybe address it directly with them. I don't know. I mean, that might be up to you.
Depends on the relationship.
Depends on the dynamic in the relationship. Absolutely. If it's your place, then yeah, go ahead and do it. But here's the other thing too. It's like, do not. A lot of times they become an emotional tornado that just vomits on everything. Like I've seen it. We've seen it happen with, I mean, even people with higher degrees than recovery coaching, of people that are just so traumatized what they're having to deal with in the field that they start vomiting on everybody else and trying to get them into shenanigans and trouble. And they're calling them at obscene times of night. And they're doing this, that, and something else. It's like, here's the thing. You as a recovery coach need to worry about you and yours and making sure that you are going to be okay the next day. Do not worry about other recovery coaches. Do not worry about other individuals. And only bring that up because a lot of times that's what recovery coaches end up getting into, is they end up getting into a collaborative with other coaches and one of those coaches has already taken on so much blasted trauma and they haven't grown any callus. And then guess what? That trauma spills out of every direction and it hits every other coach. And you got to be prepared yourself to fortify yourself, not to be like, I'm not taking it from the client that I'm helping, and I certainly ain't taking it from you.
Right. I think it's very important to point out my expertise, seeking safety. I've been teaching it for like a year.
Seeking safety.
Yeah. So we talk about setting boundaries in relationships. It's a 2-part series. And in that series, we talk about people with poor boundaries tend to violate other people's boundaries. I think it's absolutely true. I've seen it over and over. So what you're talking about is like when someone has such poor boundaries as a recovery coach, they don't respect your boundaries. Mm-hmm. I don't know what I would do if a recovery coach called me at midnight trying to get me to help somebody. I would probably have to have, I would have to have a conversation. Like what makes you think that's okay? And more than likely what I'm going to hear is, well, I'm helping a client right now, you know, like I'm trying, and it's like, okay, there's the problem. Mm-hmm. Why are you helping a client? It's midnight.
Exactly. And you have to ask yourself coming into this field, and we ask these to our classes. And that's why I think we're going off on this somewhat of a tirade, but we're having this conversation because we're in the midst of a class right now. Mm-hmm. You have to ask yourself as a recovery coach, what do you want out of this field? Right. Honestly, do you want a job? Do you want something that's going to have a little bit of longevity to it? Then you have to adapt some skills that aren't teachable. They're not something that I can't teach you how to have callus. I can warn you. I can tell you're going to want it. I can tell you the outcomes of you not having it, but I can't teach you how to grow that inside of you. You just have to get there naturally and organically by yourself. And if you don't, you're going to burn out. Mm-hmm. And if you are going into this field with I'm going to save the world by the power of my testimony. Watch me, Dad. Guess what? It ain't going to work because it's you have no idea a lot of times the forces that are against you. And I do say against you. I don't use those words lightly, whether it be insurance that's not going to cover a recovery, or whether it be how the laws are constructed, or whether it be the company that you're working for. Because here's the thing. You going in as a recovery and thinking that you're going to somehow be this bull in a china shop and that come heck or high water, you're going to get a recovery into treatment, even though they don't got insurance, even though they got certain warrants, even though they've made their way through every agency in town. But nope. How dare them? These recoveries, they need their help. Guess what? It ain't going to happen.
Big A, little A.
Yeah. Sorry to rain on your parade, but it's like, I've been in the field too long. I've been in the field way too long to see. I've not seen it happen once that way, where they think I'm going to be a bulwark, and then I'm going to ostracize every company in town, and I'm going to get this person into treatment come heck or high water. And ultimately they end up blacklisting not only that recovery, but they blacklist themselves. Because what's the recovery going to do? More than likely, they're going to go into treatment and they're going to do something that they shouldn't have done. Mm-hmm. And then every company in town is going to say, don't call us again, because you're making enemies out here for no other reason. Because guess what? Agencies are going to be there yesterday, today, and tomorrow. They're going to be there. And you believing that you're somehow going to save every recovery in town, and any person that disagrees with you is a bad, dirty, rotten, rapscallion of a scoundrel. I'll say that 3 times. Reprobates. No, believing that for some reason, anybody that doesn't help you is the evil one, and they're Sith. Mm-hmm. Like, that's a Star Wars reference. You're welcome. I heard that. Yeah. A, it's not going to help you. B, it's more than likely going to end you up in a sling and maybe even on the unemployment line.
Yeah, you get fired.
100%. I
mean, so there's an important determining factor there, I think, or another asterisk, if you will. I don't know if I said that right. Don't care.
Asterisk.
Yeah, that one. So like when we're looking at that, there's a point, right? So like every client I experienced this more in the hospital, where we dealt a lot more with like the initial treatment contact. I will do everything in my power to get a person into treatment to a degree. So like if somebody, I'll call every single treatment facility there is, they just have Medicaid.
Everyone globally, all million of them.
And in Michigan.
In Michigan, within a block radius.
Anywhere in Michigan, honestly, like I've gone through and I've called like up to, I don't know, probably like 15 rehabs for a single person, trying to find somewhere that had bed availability. And I mean, I'm not sitting there. The important thing is you're not lying to that person, right? If that person has a really bad tendency, a violent outburst, you will let the rehab know that.
Yep.
If you have release information. If you don't,
say that one more time. That's a really important.
If you have a release of information,
that thing before that.
Okay. If someone has violent tendencies or something, you let the rehab know. You don't lie.
Yes. Yeah. Do not. Oh my gosh. Do not lie. I can't tell you how many recovery coaches think that they are doing somehow a great service to the recovery by fabricating the reality of the individual. Well, they may struggle with seizures. That's a big one. They struggle with seizures, and then you lie about, no, they don't struggle with seizures, so you can get them into sub work.
Oh, now he's dead.
Yeah, now he's dead. Yeah, good luck with that. Good luck with the lawsuit.
Well, I would say there's a very good reason why every treatment facility has their guidelines. Some of them are a little bit ridiculous. I will admit that.
Some of them are, they created that rule because somebody didn't follow that rule. Somebody didn't have enough common sense.
Like, does that guy use irons? Because we had a problem with the guy who used irons. We don't talk about it. But no, I mean, when we're looking at like things like seizures, that was a great example. There's a reason subacute rehabs don't accept people with seizures or are withdrawing from benzodiazepines. And that's because both those things are deadly and they don't have medical care or medication to deal with that. There's reasons. If someone has violent outbursts and a treatment facility doesn't accept that, don't lie to him, because if that dude hits somebody with a chair, you don't want to be the guy who didn't, or told him that guy's, he's calm, collected guy, whatever it might be. I mean, just be honest, but do everything you can, don't go out of the way a little bit, make some extra phone calls or something within the time slot you were allotted to work with that person. Do what you can do.
Well, and this, I think, goes into something that we teach every single one of our recoveries that come through the academy. We're going to be teaching the ones that we're doing the academy with right now in a couple of days. We'll teach them this, which is, as counterintuitive as it may seem, the most important aspect of your job is to your resources, is to creating reciprocal relationships with resources, because there is nothing worse than you burning a resource out on a recovery that just is not ready yet. And they go in there and they start throwing fists, or they go in there and start doing horrible things or making a mockery of the situation or whatever. And then what? That resource calls you and says, don't call me for a while, or we're not taking any more referrals from you, which has happened, by the way. That's why we bring it up. There's nothing worse than that, because all of a sudden,
to me, just saying, I'm awesome.
Nah, those people don't work for us anymore. But when that happens, all of a sudden a resource is burned for untold amounts of recoveries that are coming through your door. And when you lie or you're deceitful, trying to get a recovery into some form of programming or some kind of resource, guess what? That stands out, and that'll follow you. that'll follow you to your next agency. That'll follow you to your next job. That resource doesn't want anything to do with you or anything that you have to do with at that point. And we've seen it. We've seen it happen where it's like resources say, don't call us anymore because you sent to somebody who you knew, and we know for a fact you knew was violent, or you knew, had warrants out for their arrest, or you knew that they were, a compulsive liar or a thief or somebody that has a criminal sexual conduct and they don't qualify for our program. And you knew this and you lied to us about it. Mm-hmm. And how many recovery coaches, honestly, have you seen that? And I believe it's difficult. It's difficult to walk this one out because I think it's on either side and it's very controversial, but I think it's a perfect format to have a conversation about it. Recovery coaches believing the recovery over the resource. What do you think about that?
Oh man, I've fallen into this. So I work primarily with or not primarily, a lot of my actual one-on-one clients are through a certain facility. I have fallen into hearing them and thinking, man, there might be some truth to that or something like that. And like, then the resource is like, no. And I'm like, man, who do I believe here? I've never actually followed through with that of like, man, you're lying, because like it took some actual cognitive thinking, like, more than likely these people are probably a little bit more above board, but yeah, it's like I'm trying to think of a good way to explain it. When someone says to you, man, I was kicked out of this rehab and there's no reason, it was stupid, and they just had it out for me, man.
Somebody's lying. They got case management in there that lying on me and all that kind of stuff.
And then, it's like, if a recovery tells me that, I'm sorry, that probably didn't happen. If it's a substantial claim, 100%. I had a client one time, a patient, it was in the hospital. And that person told me that they were left lying on the floor and inside of it's like a rehabilitation center, mm-hmm. A medical rehabilitation, not like substance use rehab. And they were left lying on the floor for like 2 hours because no one would help them. And he was there and people saw him, the nursing staff, and they were mad at him and they made him lay there. When he told me that is a substantial enough claim to where I went to the doctor that was working in the hospital at that time and said, hey, I don't know what the path is for this, but this is what the guy told me. If you want to talk to him about that, that'd be great. Figure out what actually happened. I don't know. So like substantial enough claims, yes, like follow through. There's legal obligation.
Yeah, there is legal obligation there, because in a scenario like that, it's like, well, that's malpractice. There's some really big question marks that need to be answered there.
Absolutely. So there's a place where you like, yes, you do believe the recovery over the resource sometimes, but I'm not going to call it. It's also handling it properly. I'm not going to call that place and be like, what is wrong with you guys? What is up with this? I'm not even going to file a complaint because I don't know how to do that.
Yep. You have to follow the avenues that are designated. Do not, as a recovery coach, go Wild West. Don't think that you're don't think that you're going to saddle up and be like, I'm going to take on this treatment center by myself. And you call them and I'm going to tell you what, you did this and this and this and this. That is the quickest way to the unemployment line. You will see.
The weight you hold behind you. I'm sorry, I'm going to say this, and this might be controversial. The weight you hold behind you as a recovery coach is about equal to a grain of sand.
Yeah.
There's a lot of recovery coaches out there. There's no degree behind being a recovery coach. Quite frankly,
there's certifications, but there's not degrees a lot of times.
Right. So, I mean, when you're talking to someone who has a doctorate, you are very outweighed in that conversation. That's why the companies are set up the way they are. Right. So like, if I have a problem, if I'm seeing a violation of rights, if I'm seeing something like that needs addressed, I'm going to address it with the clinician who has a doctorate, mm-hmm. and let them handle that, because my boss needs to talk to their boss, because I'm not going to go and talk to their boss. That's not appropriate.
Well, and we tell this to every recovery coach in there, and how many don't listen, which is, if there is something like that or in that realm, case manager, clinician, therapist, that's who it needs to be ran up the pole to. You need to let the people know that are in charge, whether they be bosses or whatever, so that they can handle it in the way that it's appropriate to handle. And as a boss, as an agency owner, I've had to have hardcover.
Boss.
I will hurt every atom in your body, and I will make it look like an accident.
Just so you know, I threw up some air quotations around that boss for those who can't see me.
And you can quote me on the quote. No, but I have called those kinds of programs and say, hey, look, like, I'm saying this for the benefit of the recovery, so they understand how often this is handled, which I get something from one of my recoveries or whatever, and I've had you sit in on conversations like this before, where I call the resource or whatever, say, how's it going? Yep. Hey, yep. Haven't heard from you in a while, yada, yada, yada. I just want to be clear. This is what I'm hearing, or this is what has happened. I want to be very clear that as far as our agency's part in the matter, we have no ill will. As far as our agency's part in the matter, we are just trying to get down to the bottom of something. So this is what we've been told. What do you have to say? And whatever they have to say, I'm going to believe them because I fostered relationships with these people. Now, here's the thing, and this is where things get tricky. If I hear from a recovery that this is happening, something is happening, and then I get another recovery unrelated, and they tell me this is happening, and I get another recovery and it's unrelated, this is happening, pattern. Okay, maybe this is happening. Something's going on over there, and maybe there is a situation that needs to be addressed that, but once again, you as the recovery coach, not your job.
100% not my job.
100% not your job.
I'm very glad that it's not my job. Like at this point, like when something big like that comes up, honestly, if you're a recovery coach out there, be thankful that you don't have to deal. Cause I don't think sometimes recovery coaches or recoveries or whatever understand how much dynamic and how much politics really goes into stuff like this. Oh my God,
politics for days.
Yeah. And it's like, I don't know much about that. I know some, obviously I picked up things as I've been in the field. I've learned a little bit. You and me have talked about it, but I don't want to try to jump into that. I don't want to try to be the person batting around, well, this organization, this is the report, these are the files, they need to be done, this, that. It's like, I'm kind of glad I just have
it's a nightmare.
Just throw it over to.
It's a nightmare to and here's the thing, and this is the unknown secret. Just as recovery coaches talk to each other in the field, guess what? So do directors, so do clinicians. I mean, in the course of, was it last week, the week prior, I talked to the head of case management for a police department. I talked to the head of Department of Health or a specific avenue of Department of Health and Human Services. I talked to the head of like 2 other major programs in the state, and we have open dialogue and conversations. Now, we're not breaching any laws or anything in doing that, but we have open dialogue and conversations about there's certain realities on the ground that we need to be communicating about. So don't think that somehow people are steeled away in this ivory tower and they're not talking to each other. Many, many directors and owners of different programs and clinicals, they have a good working relationship and they respect each other enough to say, hey, just hearing this, that, and something else. Can you shine any light on that? Right. And they probably will. And once again, as a recovery coach, it can be a little bit disheartening sometimes to feel like the fate of a certain situation is outside of the room. It's not in your hands. You discovered it. You feel like you should be able to see it all the way through. It's like, guess what? That's just not how the dynamics work. And you have to be okay with that. Cause just as you said, we've sat down and a situation may look one way, or a situation may feel like, well, it just feels like people are being political, this, that, and something else. And then after spelling things out and be like, well, here's what you didn't know. Here's the vast gaps of information that you weren't aware of. And by the end of it, it's like, oh, okay, well, that makes a heck of a lot more sense why that's a decision. So,
right. Yeah, I think there's a big point there. Like understanding that we don't know very much. We're not told very much. It's not, what do you always say? What's that thing? Never attribute to maliciousness what you contribute to ignorance.
Yeah.
So it's like lack of knowledge. That's all this is. It's not like the person has ill will out for you. There's something I didn't know. There's something they didn't know is 90% of what happens between resources. But yeah, I think off your original point, when we're talking about believing the recovery over the resource, I don't want to say, okay, so in the fellowship I'm a part of, in the 12-step fellowships, we say like addicts lie.
Sure.
Yeah. And I'll call myself an addict. For those of you who don't like it, don't care.
Fair enough.
But so like for me, when I was in addiction, I lied all the time. When I was in early recovery, I lied all the time. It was a defense mechanism. It was a character defect that I carried through most of my life as a defense mechanism, as a way to get what I want, as a way of manipulation. That follows people once they get clean. That's still a thing. We squash it over time. We deal with our character defects, but in the beginning, that is still there, still strong, maybe less prominent than what it was in active addiction. We have to understand those things. We have to look at that and take an honest look, like, more than likely it's probably the recovery not telling you the truth, not the clinician or the doctor or the peer recovery coach or the case manager or the therapist. It might just be the recovery.
And here's the thing. There's a lot of other possibilities on the table than they're just lying. You know, I've seen it. There's miscommunication. That's used 9 times out of 10. That's exactly what happened, which is the recovery is painting it in a specific lens to paint themselves out into a victim status or something else, not understanding that all in all, this is actually what happened, which I've had conversations with therapists, clinicians, and things like that. And they say, oh no, that happened. No, that happened. Yeah, that happened. But this is how he said it. And it's like the recovery paints it as, oh, the big bad wolf comes down from the mountain and they read me the riot act and I wasn't even doing anything, this, that, and something else. And then I come talk to them and they're like, well, first of all, riot act, no. Did we talk to them? Yes, but because they were being disruptive. Or we talked to them because they knew what they were supposed to be doing and they decided not to be doing it. Like, so there's that is a possibility. But the other possibility, and this is a lot of times too, is they are viewing things and projecting certain, you know, they're misrepresenting it, not because they're lying, but because they have somewhat of an overactive imagination. And that if you let somebody, and I don't mean to be offensive when I say that, but if you let somebody who is fired up start talking about event, and you've seen me do this before, and I've seen you do this before, you fight up, man, and you're just like, and you want to create the echo chamber in which the individual that you're talking to is agreeing with you.
Yeah, like,
go get him, you get him, Bubba. No, but if you let them calm down, take a few breaths and say, okay, without any embellishment, tell me what happened.
Right.
A lot of times, even that simple of an act will lead to them saying like, well, it wasn't as bad as I thought it was. Right. Or just let them sit on it for a day. Well, it wasn't as bad as I thought it was. Now, it's not always going to be the case, but a lot of times it is.
Mm-hmm. So I think the point is, there's a lot of ways to deal with that, you know, and like something like that comes up, there's a lot of different ways to deal with it. I don't even know where this conversation began now.
Well, we began with work. So for those of you listening, we went through our first day of Recovery Coach Academy today, which means from the hours of 10 to 3 online and then an hour worth of homework at night, we've been talking and teaching. So we plugged in. We're like, okay, let's get this moving here because we record everything ahead of time.
Yeah. And I want to, go home and have a semblance of a life at some point.
Yeah, well, that's not in the cards now.
Right. I'm sorry. I don't remember seeing that in your contract. But yeah, it's man, that's crazy. You know, I feel like back on the Recovery Coach Academy, I feel like it's such a shock to people because there's the conception of what recovery coaching is. And then there's like, that's probably wrong. Whatever you think this is, it's probably not that. You know, when we talk about like, you have to learn how to not care. You have to learn obviously you care when you're there. I'm very specific about that. When you're at work, my number one priority is my patient or client, not patient. My number one priority is my client. Like, I want to help my clients. I want to meet with them. I want to be there and I want to work with them to the best of my ability within my job realm. I don't care about my clients after 5 p.m. That may sound harsh, but I don't think about my clients. There's not a thought that passes my mind about like, man, I hope such and such is doing okay. As soon as I get off work, I'm going to work out. I'm going to lift. I'm going to hang out with my friends. I'm going to a meeting, whatever that might be. Because if it's
necessary,
it's 100% necessary, man. If you don't do that, you're not going to sleep. You're not going to be eating right. You're not going to be, like it has to stop at the door, man. And it's like, pick it back up when you come back in. I don't care. If someone's going through something, help them the next day. But at 5 p.m., when my hour's in, my phone does not get answered to any of my clients.
And here's the thing. And this is the red pill, the hardest truth that you have to understand. First, people die. Mm-hmm. That happens. Tragedy happens. Tragedy that was preventable happens. You cannot hold yourself responsible for a tragedy that happened in someone else's life, other than if you played a responsible role in it, which means you were supposed to show up at a place because you committed to it and you didn't. That's about the only scenario that I can think of something happening there. Or you were supposed to write like something for somebody and you didn't. Barring that tragedy needs to not be your problem. And here is the hardest fact to deal with overall. You are going to deal with situations in this field, if you do end up getting in this field, that start at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Mm-hmm. And they're going to keep going and they're going to keep going. And then it's going to hit 5 o'clock and you got a decision to make. Do you cancel your plans Do you cancel your plans with your life? In your life, do you cancel those things to make sure that this crisis is seen through? It's depending. I don't necessarily make it a habit. It might be like, this is kind of a one shot, one opportunity, not to quote Eminem.
I was about to say,
but this is a moment in time where it's like, I know this won't happen again, but this is like, maybe I do need to stay an extra hour or whatever. But if it's something that is consistent and it's like, okay, crisis, 5:00, you may have to have the conversation of like, I'm jumping out. I have to. Because that crisis may be there tomorrow. That crisis may resolve itself. We've had plenty enough instances where the crisis resolves itself. And that is one of the most difficult things of all, of having to see like the world is completely on fire for this individual and is going to continue to get on fire, and it may end up getting worse. And you may have to hit that point where it's just like, sorry, got to tap out. Yep. And especially it's like it happens at 3:00 on a Friday and it looks like it's going to carry through the weekend. You gotta say, sorry, I got to tap out. And that might seem harsh, but it's like, what else are you supposed to do? Because you cannot, if that is the adaptive strategy that the recovery has decided to utilize, more than likely, first and foremost, you as a recovery coach have done something wrong. Because if they're depending on you, that they think that they're going to be able to utilize your services through the weekend, that's a problem. But number two, you are going to burn out in dramatic form, because I've seen too many recovery coaches work Friday and then work into the late evenings on Friday and then wake up on Saturday to come and help this individual out so they can take them to the Plato's Closet or whatever, because that's when discounts are, or that's when they give out free vouchers, and then make sure Sunday they get up so that they can get to their church service, because it's important that they get that holistic part of their recovery, and then they're back on Monday and it's like, you're going to be done. You'll be crispy in a month. Yep. If that, like, you can't continue. You need your time off. Yep.
Just like, I mean, it does, even to my friends, to be honest with you. I feel like that's one thing this job has really helped me with, is even with my friends in recovery, there's a limit. I mean, I love my friends, dude. I'm a really family friend oriented person. I really do value friendship. I value helping friends. I believe that friendship, it's not always reciprocal to a like full degree, but it definitely needs to be, if somebody needs help, you help them.
Sure.
But quite frankly, most people call me between the hours of like midnight and 6 a.m. and need help, and barring that it is something that I like, they really need my help, probably not going to be there. You know, I'm sorry, but that's probably the way it is. Like there are certain people, this kind of sounds rough, I guess. And I don't know, maybe I'm not a nice person. I don't know. There's a possibility.
I'm discovering things about myself as I'm talking about myself. Right.
But I mean, really, there are things like if someone is like stranded on the wrong side of town, their car broke down and it's freezing outside and they don't have sure, they don't have money. Yeah. If someone's stranded, cars broke down, it's kind of nice outside. You know, it's not that cold. They got some money for an Uber. It's like, well,
start walking, my friend.
No, Uber's an option. You know, I mean, honestly, I don't know, that sounds rough, but like I have a lot of boundaries in my relationships, but that's what keeps me safe, man.
Yes.
It's like, even with my family, like if my family starts to overreach into my life, I have no problem saying like, no.
Yep.
Sorry. Can't go there. Can't do that. That's not okay. I mean, I feel like boundaries are just so important in the field, in recovery, in life, everything. You know, I see people at meetings and they write down their phone number and they're like, call me. I don't care what time it is. I'll sit there and talk to you for 3 hours. I'm like,
no. And I don't know. I think we've talked about this, and we talked about it not too long ago because we were in the midst of academy. Like there is that differentiation between a sponsor and a recovery coach. And I hear people in meetings say that too. And it's just like, that's fine. And maybe you work in a field, maybe you're a mechanic, maybe you do, you know, you're a lawyer, whatever.
Maybe you don't have a job.
Maybe it could be. And maybe that's okay for you. And that's how you operate. But for people that are in the trenches, that are in the field like we are, nope, not going to happen. No. Like I go to a meeting. If I go to a meeting, it's for myself. I'm not looking to go and pick up a sponsee there. Honestly, you know, now I may end up getting a sponsor or whatever. And I know for you, that's what you've chosen to do, but it's like, I'm not looking to walk out, you know, I'm not looking to leave my job and then walk out the steps with another person in their life. Cause it's like too much to do.
I would say I would probably take on a sponsee at some point. I wouldn't really have an issue with that.
Sure. If
someone called me before a meeting and said, hey man, I really need a ride to this meeting. And I'm just calling through this list of numbers I got. and I'm going to that meeting, yeah, cool. I'll
Yeah.
come pick you up. Like it's like barring you're not like living in Detroit, or something like that.
Fair enough.
Like, yeah, I'm going to come pick you up. I'm going to give you a ride to the meeting. I'm going to be there. I'm going to talk to you. If you're struggling after a meeting and you decide like, hey, I kind of like this guy, I want to talk to him and tell him about what I'm struggling about, I'll sit there and have that conversation. I'm willing to help people. And that's obviously, like I said, I compartmentalize my life. I have my job and then I have my outside job. So I'm not opposed to helping people in my outside job, but there's also like boundaries for me, man, no matter what it is, job, family, friends, don't care if it is at the cost of my serenity, my recovery, my happiness, it is not worth helping somebody else out. And that sounds really rough. My sister hates that because she's a very empathetic person. She's willing to help people to a detriment sometimes. And she actually said to me the other day, she said, there's sometimes other people's needs trump your own needs. And I said, no.
Wrong.
Not there, maybe to someone else, but to me, no.
If you're married and you have a child, yes. Anything else? Nope.
That's probably why I'm single.
No.
But yeah, it's like, I'm sorry, but yeah, well, that is your needs. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Your family is your needs.
Oh yeah. If my wife is not happy with something, I'll know.
Yeah. Your happiness will go away very soon.
Very quickly. It'll disappear for a long while, my friend.
She's hearing us right now. She's like preparing a knife.
Yeah. She's like, keep talking, friend. Yep. But no, I completely agree because it is, I think, the hardest fact. And I'm happy that we had this conversation today because we talk about this a lot. And I know that I've struggled with it and you've helped me through some things. I know that you've struggled with it and I don't know if I actually helped, but
you
I
always
just
help me, man. You're a good guy.
Hard pass. I don't do it on purpose.
Can I have
a
raise? No, I'm just playing.
No. Please?
Come on. I said something nice.
Yeah. But no, I think that this is an important thing because it was a frank conversation. This is an important thing for people in the field to understand because, recoveries are going to listen to this and there are going to be some things that they disagree with. And it's like, this is our personal experiences in the field. We are trainers. This is what we teach is like, we want you to be the best recovery coach you can possibly be. But there are a lot of things that you have to understand that you can be the best that there is, but you can ultimately fail because you're the best that there is, but you didn't take care of yourself. And I think that's all this conversation was today is like taking care of yourself is the most important.
Right. And I would say with the recovery disagreeing with some of the things in the field, that's going to make sense. I feel like one thing that nobody in the field outside of the field recovery can disagree with is if you help somebody at a detriment to yourself, that is not okay.
Not a good idea.
I don't know what that looks like for you. Like you said, some people may not have a job. Some people may work on their own hours. That may be okay for them to talk to someone for 2 hours. That's not okay for me. If it damages my life, not worth it. Not worth it.
Not worth it. Well, I think that this is, I think next week we start the ACEs training, man. We started First Childhood Experiences with Dr. Powell and it's going to be awesome.
Yeah.
For those of you who are listening to this, please tune in. Something I didn't know, this is going to be one of, if not the first ACEs training that has been recorded and allowed. It's a copywritten training, but is allowed to stay on record. And we got the clarification, we got the approval to do it. We have the master trainers coming in. Definitely going to be worth it. I've been through the ACEs training. It will blow your hair back. Some of the things that they teach you about genetics and stuff like that. It's so worth it. So stay tuned into that. What?
We have an interview with Dr. Bob Powell coming out on Friday.
I believe it is Friday.
Yeah. Amazing dude. I actually know him personally. He's an awesome guy. I think Christian knows him too.
Yeah. Well, he's so full disclosure. We have the same last name because I am his son, but he is one of the foremost trauma informed therapists in the state. The guy is bloody well brilliant. He's funny too.
His input is his take on trauma and addiction. And I mean, the connection there, it was so insightful, man, to talk to him about what trauma plays in addiction and stuff like that. And it makes so much sense. It is worth the listen.
Yes. So those of you listening, we podcast every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, 8:00. Mondays, we do the science of addiction. Wednesdays, we do meditations, and Fridays, we interview. Have a good one.